Okay, that's a good sign.
All right. Yep. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Redwood Talks. Today we have, I'm your host, Amanda Gianelli, and today we have Peter Pistorius, who is a co-founder of Redwood as well as Snaplet, who will talk to us about some recent improvements to as well as future state for the Redwood CLI. And then we have Brian Douglas from Open Sourced, who's going to talk to us about the secret sauce to open source communities. So why don't we just jump right in? Peter, are you ready to go? Let's hear about the Redwood CLI.
I am ready to go, and I prepared slides for everyone here. Um, Hopefully, what I'm about to say isn't too controversial, but I'm just going to share my screen if that's possible. Oh, I shared my screen, and it was possible. So what I wanted to share was this. I am sort of the co-creator of Redwood.js, and I was here from the early days, and I have 1,288 commits, and David has 1,238 commits. He is very, very close to passing me, and that is going to be a sad day for me. But
I'm cheating. I'm cheating, Peter. All of your commits are, features and high quality. I became the release master, and that was my shortcut. So this isn't controversial. We should pin you. I want to pin you to the top of the commit history forever and ever.
I want to be fair to everyone else as well, is that at some stage we switched to squashing commits. So for every PR, it's just like one. But for me, I think I had several where it was like 50 commits, and I do commit quite.
No, check out my spike. Do you remember my spike? See that? Like, is that April, May, June of like 2020? I think that was one where I had like 100 commits in one PR because I forgot to squash it. Anyway,
Nice.
it's pretty outstanding. Right. Anyway,
I'm gonna head
Peter,
into my slides.
Thank you for bootstrapping this project, man.
It's a pleasure. I miss it every day. Every day, I'm like, I remember the time, my Redwood time. That was fun. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Peter. You can follow me at App Factory on Twitter. I'm the CEO of Snaplet, and before that, I worked on Redwood.js. And I'm a lifelong programmer who somehow found himself in a position of CEO, and I'm navigating that path. So I think a lot about CLIs because Snaplet has a CLI, and I think a lot about DX because Snaplet is a product for developers. We give developers data to code against. But what I'm actually here to talk about today is the Redwood.js CLI developer experience improvements. I meant to put a little Redwood logo there. What I think about when I think about developer experience, I think of these three pillars. The first one is reliability. If it doesn't work, you don't have any leg to stand on when it comes to developer experience. The other one is discoverability. Am I able to run a command in a CLI and quickly figure out what it can and cannot do, or do I have to read a ton of docs? And the third one is performance. Like, does it take a lot of time to do things? So I am fairly confident that Redwood is very stable, that Redwood has a ton of discoverability, and everything that we have kind of makes sense. What I'm not so confident about is the performance aspect of Redwood. So we actually spend a little bit of time improving the speed of every single command in Redwood. And we did that just by unbundling the imports and only running the imports that are relevant to a single command. I'm not going to go into that. I really want to talk about this proposal for improving the speed of the Redwood.js CLI, or improving the performance of the Redwood.js CLI. So the first thing I kind of looked at was installation time. If you run yarn create Redwood app and you don't have any cached node modules, it takes over a minute to kind of get started with the project. And the reason for that is because we have 897 megabytes of node modules as the sort of like in a blank project, and that's a lot. It's excusable given what we're using, but I wanted to figure out where is this happening? And I started like digging out like the packages, and I went to Bundlephobia and I typed Redwood.js CLI, and our project is so big that Bundlephobia was like, nah, forget about it. So I found another approach, which was I just installed the Redwood.js CLI package and a whole bunch of others, and then I broke out how big they are. I'm going very, very fast, so I'm going to speak a little slower. What I found was that the Redwood.js CLI package was almost 600 megs. The core package is 230 megs, and then API and web are 40, 50 megs each. And these are sort of reasonable. This is massive. What I then did was I split sort of the dependencies that we have into 3 categories: design time, build time, and runtime. Runtime is what's required when you actually are running your application and serving it to users in production. Design time is the stuff that you are using when you're busy building your application. So like Visual Studio, like ESLint configurations, testing frameworks, Storybook, all those kind of things. And then build time. So, so the things that are required in order to actually convert your code into code that's runnable on the server. So design time and build time are 700 megabytes, and then runtime is 200 megabytes. These are things that users do not care about. They're not concerned with the fact that you have Babel installed or any other things. They just want to run a command, have it do something that they want it to do. These node modules are ones that users do care about because they are actually coding against them. Like Router has APIs that they need to understand, there are files that they need to understand, and like these are the ones that they care about because they ship them to the users. So how do we improve this? Can we delete them? We can't delete them. We kind of need them. Can we make the files smaller, compressing them? When you copy down from Yarn, they actually are compressed. So we can't really do that. Can we ship less node modules by bundling them? And can we cache them? I think actually we can do a little bit of all of this if we take an approach of the holy binary. So what I mean by this is we take everything in our design time and our build time, and we package them into a single binary. So an executable file that contains Node.js, that contains all of our node modules. And then we ask people to install that instead. So right now what we're doing is we say, here are all the packages, install them individually every single time you clear your node modules, or every time you start a new project, or every time you run on CI, or every time you try and build it, here's everything, install it. So what I'm saying is like, we take those out of the package.json files, and we instead create a single binary. When people install the single binary, it gets pushed into a folder on their local machine where we kind of cache it. And the Redwood.js project has a reference to this binary. In that way, oh, Toby, you unmuted yourself. Oh, I thought you wanted to say something. Participation is encouraged. So what I'm basically proposing is that we create an executable binary for Redwood.js, and we use this as a starting point in order to improve the massive amount of node modules that we install, because I do think that this is a point of contention for a lot of users when they're evaluating Snaplet. They kind of like right click on the node modules folder and they see that it's almost a gig, and they're like, whoa, what's happening here? But really, the majority of the things that they're installing, they shouldn't care about. And this is an approach that we use in Snaplet, and it works really well. A lot of advantages to it. And that's really it. That's my 20-minute presentation done in 5. So if anyone has commentary, and I know Danny, myself, and you have chatted about this before. Yeah, I'm open to discussion.
Do we have any questions from anybody?
I do, Peter. I know we've discussed this before, so I thought about it as well, and I did some experiments with it. And one of the things that came up just from talking to other people who are shipping binaries is that code signing is a problem, especially on OS X. Is that something like you have to worry about in Snaplet, or is that
No.
only in certain situations that you worry about code signing?
So I haven't actually experienced an issue with code signing and Snaplet, and I'm not sure why. Now that you mentioned that, I'm like, surely something must have, like, there should be like a pop-up or a warning or something, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's
Do
the same.
terminal
It's not
apps-
clear. It's not clear to me when you need to code sign a binary and when you don't. Yeah, and it's a very hard thing to Google because you search for it and you only get the basic stuff. But yeah, like that came up, and I have the same question as you in that is that something we need to worry about, or is this a non-problem?
Yeah, I think it's a non-problem, maybe because of the runtime that we're in. It being like the shell. Maybe Apple's just like, meh, do what you want there. You know what you're doing. You're typing commands into a computer. So maybe.
Hey, Peter, I have a quick question.
Yeah, Alice.
Great presentation. Really like the simple idea. I mean, this might be a beginner question, but just like once you install the binary, if you have multiple Redwood projects, can you all reference the same binary?
Yeah, and the basic idea is to kind of version them. So if you had a Redwood JS project that had like a certain version, a CLI package installed, that it would have a reference to the binary that's stored in a separate location. So the idea is that everyone would be able, all the projects would be able to reference the same binary, which would decrease the installation size as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. It helps drive home how nice this could be.
Awesome. Any more questions from anyone?
Yeah, Peter, I've got one. So one of the areas where our CLI is causing the logjam right now is deploy. And not so much if you're using Netlify or Cell, but when you use, when you're using Fastify, traditional service renderer, anything with a Docker container, in order to build database migrations, data migration, we need the CLI. In order to start up the server, we need CLI. And so then that, by the way, the mass of the CLI being greater than the black hole is probably my favorite slide ever. Then the mass of your Docker container becomes greater than, right, a black hole. How could this approach be used in those contexts? Or have you thought that far yet? So one idea that I had thrown by Dom, I'm not sure if you were involved in it, was what if we create I don't know if it needs to be like a Yarg CLI, but what if we just separate and have a package that's, Redwood JS deploy, and then that would only contain the commands. And so that would be used at deploy time. And maybe the CLI binary could then call that for deploy commands when needed. But yeah, I don't know. It's because the same problem we have inside a deploy. We need to minimize disk. We need to minimize mem that's being used. It's really hard to actually take any, to monitor what's going on inside and get any data from it. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but yeah.
It's like I split it into these three parts, like design time, build time, run time. And I think build time is actually a special case because you run that in certain scenarios. Like you run that mostly on machines. Design time you run on your own machine. And that's the biggest part. Like core is 200 megs. So I think there are opportunities there to split these out and make it smaller as a whole. Yeah, it would be actually quite nice because right now we bundle sort of everything in the CLI. We bundle Storybook,
Right.
We bundle everything, but
Right.
most people don't use that stuff. So it would be nice to say, like, if you try and run Storybook, it'd be like, hey, you actually need to add this as a dependency, or we'll add it as a dependency for you, and then it will be a development package within your project, not something that just everyone installs. And I think we kind of owe it No, I don't know. I was going to go down like a little bit of a political thing there, but I'm not going to go. Skip it. Backtrack.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And then mechanically, like, how would we go from where we are right now to a binary? I've never done it before, so I don't know. I just imagine.
So,
oh my gosh, how many architectures do we need to build for? Right, like, what do we
what
do?
we're using is a product called PKG by Vercel, and it essentially does this for you. It follows the paths in your code base and will create a binary for you. It's really, really easy to get started. I think it'd be easier than what we think. The hard parts are going to be distributing the binary, making sure that we version them, caching them. Like, how do you make a user aware that there's a cached version of a binary on their machine? If it, yeah, I think that will be sorting out the pipeline will be the more difficult issue here, but certainly not impossible. Like, GitHub has ways to upload binaries to a release, and we could just download it straight from there.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And again, you said you've been doing this for Snaplet already. So your pain is our gain.
Yeah. And it wasn't painful.
Even better.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's really great. Thank you. I'm glad we had a little extra time for questions too. Yeah, I remember you talking about these ideas 18 months ago. I mean, early on. I don't think you knew how the pieces might come together, but you've had a vision for this for a long time.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think in making these slides, I was kind of reminded a little bit of Aldu, because he really spoke about design time, build time, runtime.
Yes.
And that was an idea that came to me from him. So like, this is like a continuation of everyone's input, and just a direction that I'd love to try to see where it sucks. Yeah.
I have one last question, but I'll defer to anyone else who has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. In CI, can we make it use this cached version of the binary instead of downloading it every time?
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, if the releases are at GitHub, if you're using actions anyway, then it's like in the same network. So, but you could cache it as well. Maybe we set the cache location to something like I don't know. Yeah, we could figure it out. Totally.
Question from the live stream from Jace. I think you've met Jace before, Peter. He's asking if would there still be an option for people to not use the binary and build things from Yarn, right? So as a fallback,
Yeah,
if someone
totally
wanted to say, I'd rather go the infinite black hole route,
totally.
Or I mean, also for debugging, that could be really helpful too. If you needed to figure out what was going on in the CLI to be able to get to the node modules.
Yeah, totally possible. Like, the mechanics of creating the binary are sort of outside of, or play very well with inside the Node.js PKG node modules universe. So when we develop Snaplet, we actually just run ordinary node code, but we distribute the binary, and we run the binary and tests and things like that. But you could totally just install it as a package and then run it directly. Very doable.
All right, cool.
Sweet.
I have one more question. Sorry.
One from the chat?
From time. Well, there were a couple actually. There were good things. Why haven't we done this yet, Peter?
I think it feels a little like outside of the norm for Node.js. Usually we just package all the like node modules along with the thing, the package, and that's how we do it. But I think we shouldn't be doing that, and maybe that's why we didn't do it. It was just easier to do it the other way. And when you're building something, you just kind of try and make it work, and then after a while you notice that it's 700 megabytes big, and you're like, oh geez. And one of the things that we were trying to do when we built Redwood.js was to be conscious of the learned helplessness that developers grow over time, and we wanted to interrupt those things that they were doing that sucked, and we wanted to change them. And in doing that, we've actually introduced our own learned helplessness. Like maybe we're just like not aware of it. How often do you run yarn create Redwood app? Almost never. I ran it today a couple of times, and like last week once or twice, and I was like, damn, this is slow. How did it get so slow? Yeah. You see the impact whenever you run yarn install and things like that, and you feel it. Yeah. So learned helplessness is my answer.
All right. Well, I think we're caught up on questions. If anyone thinks of anything after, you can always reach Peter, either like he said on Twitter, I think it was @Factory, and then he's also in the forums, and you'll find him, he's around. So let's jump over to Brian. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, welcome. Good to see Peter again, and David and friends. I'm around on the internet, but BWO on the internet, BWO on Twitter, and yeah, I want to jump in. I did drop a link to one of my build pipelines and actions. That actually is not an NPM module. We have an NPM module, similar solution that y'all are talking about, but I didn't feel like I can provide a ton of input because I didn't build that. I had a contributor do that. So, but yeah, happy to connect and make friends with open source and Redwood as well, which honestly, I think we do have quite a bit of overlap too as well in our community. So I was invited by David to share about insights in the Redwood contributions, talking specifically about open source and what we're shipping in the next 2 weeks, actually. So it's actually live right now, but we'll go live, and I'll go into that in a second, but I have slides. So definitely check out open source, opensauce.pizza. Also, I meant to switch my camera angle because there we go, opensauce.pizza. All right, excellent. So I actually wanted to quickly just talk through, to share a quick story, and some people probably have heard this if you've seen me speak. I spent the last 4.5 years working at GitHub. I shared my open source contributor journey a lot doing DevRel. I was the director of DevRel there until 3 months ago when I moved to do open source full time. But back in 2015, I didn't know how to do open source. I learned how to code officially in 2013, like actually make apps that worked. I knew JavaScript and stuff like that prior, but that's when I feel like I really knew what I was doing. And I had this problem where I wanted to solve this problem to auto invite people to Slack, because Slack was brand new. I found a node service on GitHub, not even npm, just like directly on GitHub. I was like, oh, this solved my problem. Let me go ahead and clone this repo and make it work. I didn't know how to use Node. I knew JavaScript, I knew jQuery, didn't know any server-side JavaScript in 2015. So I reached out to this guy that created, I went on GitHub, was like, hey, maintainer, your email is on your profile. Let me email you directly and ask you questions. I didn't know how issues worked. I barely knew Stack Overflow. I was just like fumbling my way through building stuff and learning how to code on the internet. So to my surprise, he actually responded back to me and was like, oh, here's your answer. Turns out IOJS was a thing. So there's a split in the Node community back in 2015 where ES6 wasn't next level JavaScript yet. Back in ES 2015, literally, that's the year. So there was like a split in the community. You had to run a Harmony flag. This is all like maybe known knowledge for folks who've been around for a while. Maybe not, you didn't know that was knowledge if you just started doing JavaScript in the last couple of years, but I just want to say it was like super hard. This person was super helpful with me. And what got me is that I messaged him on a Friday night. He messaged me back Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. By Sunday night, I had a working app. And the entire time he was traveling in Thailand to follow a K-pop artist, which I honestly don't know who this person is, or K-pop. At the time, I had no idea what K-pop was, didn't know what digital nomads were, but that's what he was. And it was a fascinating experience. I learned so much about the internet that day. But now, fast forward, I'm working on this pizza company called Open Sauced, and it really is on the premise that this Gucci Mane quote, if you don't got sauced, then you lost. Gucci Mane, it's an artist, but he's got a great quote. I don't know if I'd recommend his music, but to be quite honest, like that quote's enough for me to understand, like I knew I wanted to do open source. Open source is how I got my career started, how I like sustained myself in this industry through open source. And I'm appreciative of maintainers who put time, and also contributors who leave breadcrumbs and open issues to make it easy for me to solve my problems, my technical problems. So I've now converted over the chief sauce officer over at open source, and that's what I'm doing full time. And just really want to quick, my intro to Redwood, I just wanted to mention that as well, because I feel it'd be apt, was through AJC Web Dev, Anthony. He randomly reached out to me, invited himself on my podcast, which is Jamstack Radio. Definitely check it out, like and subscribe. And we've since had multiple streams together where like we built an entire admin dashboard in Redwood in like an hour, which was the basis of what hot open sauce.pizza is. So we've been indexing lots of Git data to provide insights for folks eventually, well, in the next couple of weeks. But my first discovery of like how I had a Superbase database I was populating through GitHub Actions, and I was like, I need a UI on top of it. So we built it extremely quickly. We since have moved to React and Vite, and we have a whole thread on why we did that, but Redwood's still on my list of things to do for our admin dashboard. Just don't have the bandwidth yet. Well, I don't have the bandwidth to maintain that thing. I've got to hand it off to somebody else at the moment. So today, we went through a process, and open source has been around since end of 2016. It was really, I built it to use the GitHub GraphQL API. Like that was my only goal. I wanted to build on top of the API, and then build a CRM for my open source contributions. Because at that point, I figured out a lot of stuff about GitHub and how to do open source by then. I built that CRM tool to work for me. 2 years ago, I added login, where other people could also leverage it to track their contributions. And then I started pushing towards getting more people into open source was the goal for open source. And I found that there was a disconnect between maintainers and companies that have open source projects and onboarding open source contributors. First off, like not every project is open for contribution. So I just wanted to answer that question quickly through insights. Also, folks who are accepting contributions, like what type of contributions, and I'll go through that in a second. So this is the sort of alpha dashboard we built together with this other tool called GitSense. So that's what that looks like, and I'll reference that in a second. But the question is like, how do I get an open source? Like I found Redwood, what do I do? First thing that a lot of folks do is they go to the GitHub repo, try to figure out who's who. Actually, I just completely failed on my transition. A lot of times when people want to get into open source, they start with Hacktoberfest. That's like a big introduction to open source. 80,000 participants commit 4 or is it 5 repos, get a t-shirt or plant a tree. We actually reached out to Hacktoberfest to build a dashboard for them. So this is what we actually will be shipping in 2 weeks and what's live today. There is an S in that URL. I keep forgetting. Insights plural.opensauce.pizza. If you try to hit it live, just understand that it's gonna need that S there. But yeah, we're basically identify things like spam across the entire ecosystem of Hacktoberfest, like contribution. We didn't get a chance to do leaderboards, but like we want to be able to like see who's doing a good job and also who's doing a bad job. So we don't want to condone folks who are doing spam, but I think it's an opportunity just to enforce using spam features on GitHub, which unfortunately don't get used enough. So like there's things like I did this like interview series called The Secret Sauce on YouTube, and I was chatting with Faraz, who's doing socket.dev, and we got this whole tangent about like spamware. Well, spamware, but rather spamware attached to open source, where you they call it protestware really. Is the other name, but so like when wars happened in the Eastern Europe, there was a lot of protestware that was happening on open source projects. I don't know if anybody was aware of that or not, but it's an issue. And like usually the easiest thing to identify spammers is like accounts created in less than 30 days. And there's multiple similar PRs open up in multiple repos. So if I told Redwood that, and I told you here are the 10 spammers across the entire ecosystem, and then we went over to Vite, and then we went over to like Next, or we went to other projects and said, hey, these are the spammers. Let's go ahead and mark these actively in our project and say these are active spammers. It's like Block Party is like a social app to be able to identify bad actors in social. We hope to ship features like that eventually. It's just not on the roadmap immediately, but hopefully by early next year we can start work on that. So that is what we worked on, and that's what we're going to be shipping pretty soon. We will have this so any maintainer can also set up a custom dashboard for their projects and their repos to identify similar insights, but better as well. So insights that are not on this list, we hope to get feedback to find out what other stuff you want to know. Here's some other ideas, and I'll quickly go through another analogy about The Last Dance and Michael Jordan. I actually absolutely love this documentary. Like this is my coming up as a kid watched Michael Jordan. I was a Orlando Magic fan. So they lost twice in the Eastern Finals or the conference finals, but Shaq, Penny Hardaway, Horace Grant, that's my team growing up. But during that year, like that was like the sort of like the wind down of Michael Jordan when he retired the first time, because he retired 2 more times after that. He's like the Tom Brady of basketball, if anybody is not familiar with Michael Jordan. But what I'm getting at is during that era, it was a shut up and jam era. So like basically just like, loud dunks. What we've learned recently is like there's a lot of orchestration that comes with basketball. And I apologize, like I'm quickly going to roll through basketball, get back to code and insights. But what we've discovered in the last 10 years, there was a book called Sprawl Ball, similar like Moneyball. They identify statistics and identifying there's 1 point on the court where you have 31% of the shots that go in. So all plays, and when you do plays in basketball, they optimize to get to the ball to that point, or pretty close to that point. If you know the ball will go in, or if you know through Peter's talk about like binaries, like, and maybe that's a point of failure, maybe it's a point of improvement, like then you can optimize more CI, more infrastructure around that one solution. And I think that is like my analogy for basketball to CI. And I used to sell GitHub Actions back in the day. I've hung up my my GitHub hat or my hoodie. Actually, my hoodie's right over there. So what I'm getting at is like every role in open source can provide impact. Like there's, like I mentioned Anthony, my intro to Redwood, like he wasn't at the time a core team member. He wasn't also like contributing code. He was just inviting people to join the community. And I think that's a huge part of open source that constantly gets missed because we're all attached to green squares and try to make sure that like continuing to feed the green square monster. But there's so many other ways to get people to engage in community and eventually level up. So insights with an S. So sort of winding down my last couple slides, and I'm looking forward to like questions, feedback, as well as like my DMs open as well. When I go into the Redwoods, so like we just looked at this in Peter's slides, but we go into the Redwood project and you click on the Insights tab, like this is what you get. You get the contributors. What's funny about this, like the contributors tab is like based on contributions. So it's like whoever has the most contributions. So, hey, there's Tom, and there's a few folks that, a few bots rather, that are like in the top 10 contributor list, which is amazing. Congrats to the bots, everyone bow down to our overlords. But then you get this other sort of Insights tab, which is, I'll be honest, kind of underwhelming. And I can be honest because I don't work at GitHub anymore. Like it's cool to see open PRs and close issues, but like, I don't think this is really actionable. I don't think people are actually opening this up very regularly. And also Renovate bot, crushing it. Someone give them a raise. So looking at the Insights tab, you could see like these blobs, which we saw earlier too as well. A lot of people don't know you can actually highlight sections. So I'm actually not highlighting all the project. I'm highlighting just the last 4 months because I want to see who's been contributing. So like JTOR, I forgot their first name, but I've actually done this experiment in these insights with multiple people in the past, and that they're always up there within the last couple of months. So I don't know if they're represented here, but shout out to them for their effort and contributions in the project, keeping it moving. But if I scroll back out, then I see a couple other orange blobs to kind of identify, okay, so David had a vacation and there's some contribution here. But there's not like, you can't really click through and see what's happening. Like I could see numbers, but what I want to do is see like if I walk in the Redwood and I have a problem with binaries, or I have a problem with my package upstream or my site, like who do I talk to? And that always becomes a challenge because usually the people who show up on the top of the list are the folks who are going to talk to you first. And like Peter's already working on his own thing. And like everyone else is like, they're all doing their own thing. They have their own project, but not everyone's available to answer those questions. So hopefully like they navigate to the forum, they find the README, all the other stuff. So this is what we actually, and the Cert Alpha product that we've been doing, working on, is trying to actually get a distribution model of like what contribution looks like for the past 30 days. Because usually the last 30 days is kind of when you get a good insight of like, is the project healthy? Is it contribution flowing? If it isn't, is that okay? Like a lot of times there's projects, like I use SWR pretty heavily. That project gets like 1 or 2 contributions a month and that's it. But it just works. Like I don't have to think about it. Like curl, it just works. I don't have to think about it. So like we want to provide that sort of distribution to identify. These are open PRs, by the way. So like you don't see many open PRs past the 7-day mark, which is why it's a little sparse over here. So like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Like, we're welcome to provide these insights. So that way the maintainer, the OSPO leader, whoever the DevRel person can identify of this repo, like, are we doing a good job? Now, I wanted to point out this as well, because there's a person who does not look like the others, not physically, but just more distribution wise. This 50% line really is like, these are scale of the size of the PRs. So when you get a PR that crosses that 50% line, and this is based on data that I've been just messing with for the past 6 months, usually it's like identifies one or two things. Spam, which this is not spam. It also identifies bus factor. So if this person leaves the project tomorrow, like, will the project be okay? I don't know. We can get in that in a second. Or it could be opportunity for mentorship and knowledge transfer, because like, this is probably usually it's a performance thing, like someone improves performance or touches a lot of the lock file, and then that's actually what happened. Touch a lot of the lock file, so they get bumped up higher, which is a good start to like kind of identify like what's happening, what progress is happening in the project. But also, I think people who can change multiple dependencies in one PR at the same time, or people I want to like get mentorship from, I want to write documentation for the project. Because like, if you have, it's like there's a lot of trust in the code base when you make a ton of dependency changes. So when this thing gets shipped and there's a dependency upstream that's also broken or whatever, that's the person who's going to get reached out to, be like, hey, thanks so much for your PR, but by the way, turns out React 18 doesn't work for us anymore. Like, we have to fix a bunch of stuff, and might be a real life situation, might not be a real life situation for y'all. But actually, are you on React 18?
We are not.
Okay. So so then this becomes like, if you want React 18, maybe reach out to the person. I've already figured out their name, so apologies if you're here and representing this chat. But what I'm getting at is like, there's opportunity to start doing some tracking. The other thing about the React 18 is like, we want to do file level changes. So like, there's some common file updates that we have to track to see if they can be up to date. I haven't done yet. I have a React 17 app, and then I have two React 18 apps, and I started those post React 18, and then the 17 one I haven't touched because I haven't really provided any maintenance to that product. So anyway, I haven't felt the pain yet. So I'll pour one out for y'all. So anyway, what I'm getting at is like, I love the fact that we can get graphs and blobs about what's happening in code bases. But what we're really aiming towards with open source is we want to have file level insights. Like, we want to be able to track changes from JavaScript to TypeScript. We want to track changes for contributions month over month. So like, are you growing month over month in contributions? Are you going the opposite direction? Is there opportunity to sort of plug into holes, fill in the gaps as people roll off of the project? Like, these are all things that I want to provide context to project maintainers for. And this is like an eagle-eyed view of, I don't know how to pronounce Toby. Anyway, that was their name, or their handle rather. But yeah, this is now, I can actually see, instead of just orange blobs, I can now see exactly what contributions, these are all representative of PRs. I can identify like what contributions are happening in the last 30 days, the last 6 months, the last year. I also can identify, this is like a little Easter egg that it's not, as we were testing and getting feedback, the birthday present, and then in 12 hours, like their first commit ever in the Redwood project was 12 hours ago at the time of the screenshot. So like that, now we can then flag that and be like, oh, first time contributor, like let's treat them, let's all welcome them. Or we've got someone who's been around for 2 years. Like, this person knows what they're doing. I can provide like way more. I don't have to nitpick their PR. Perhaps they've had multiple contributions. They've had 500 plus changes in the code base, which is what that is. This is all the CUI is actually getting updated, and it's represented differently now. But I'm explaining this because I know these are the questions I usually get first. Other things that we've been experimenting with is like types of contributions. So like, we did identify one person who had a lot of lock file changes. So identifying whether this is maintenance, whether these are net new features. It's ironic that this is, I didn't plan this, or maybe David, you planned this, but you guys went in the sort of competing of the contributions, and you crossing over Peter's contribution graph, like identifying whether it was new stuff, features, whether it got added to a release, whether you're just sort of moving files around. We could do that through some light heuristics. So there's some hand waving there, but identifying file type and stuff like that. We can do it for JavaScript pretty easily. So yeah, and that's the future. The other thing is on high risk and low risk, like folks who take higher risks and change all of the dependencies or update things from React 17 to 18, like they will float up the top. This actually is this indexing is actually pretty expensive to do. So we don't have a Redwood example, but this is VS Code. And so we can identify the majority of the VS Code contributions fit within the center bucket, which is medium risk, which is good for me if I'm a PM. If someone's taken like weeks and weeks on updating dependencies or introducing new dependencies, like they'll float up into the high risk column. But that's currently not live because, again, expensive little indexing. We'll have to raise money or something like that so we can make that work. But at the end of the day, like open source, like we're looking to be more than green squares. We're looking to provide insights for individual contributors, but also for folks who are steering the ship when it comes to project management or maintenance. So yeah, that is my my talk, my introduction. If you want to talk more, I'm happy to answer questions now. Also, I'm on the internet as well. And I alluded to this secret sauce. You know, I gotta always be pushing like and subscribe. So please, if you wanted to join me on a future interview, like let me know. If you have recommendations for folks, let me know as well. We're doing an in-person interview series. In person for now. We were just trying to keep the quality bar up, and also I like seeing people in person and having conversations. So that's what that series is. That's me on GitHub. It's my MySpace page. And remember, if you don't got sauce, then you lost. So that was so much emphasis. Thank you so much.
Brian, this is great. Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I was going to say the same thing. This was fantastic. Seriously. And definitely appropriate because I know we've been having a lot of community discussions lately around the Redwood community. So knowing this type of information exists and can be found is pretty awesome. So good job. Anybody have any questions for Brian?
Oh, so many questions. Does anyone want to go in front of me? Because you guys know this is Brian. I'm just like, I feel like I found my new best friend, and which much to the chagrin of probably everyone else on the core team. Just we talk about this a lot, and I wish you. I mean, I'm glad we found you now. Where were you 2 years ago? And because we've been making it up as we go and been a lot of intuition driven. We know we wanted this. We know we wanted to optimize for community collaboration. The core team was an organic response to the people that were collaborating on the project, right? Oh, we should actually spend more time and give some leadership to people who basically are already leaders in the community, at least make that official by a title, but the work was already there. And so, yeah, I have a few thoughts and comments. I just want to say this really resonates. I'm really excited about what you're doing at Open Source. We want to put these insights to work. We have never found, although we've tried to create it and piece some things together, we've never found a dashboard of people making contributions that is actually helpful us to drive the change we want to see and the health over time that we want to see. So anyway, way to go. So I know those aren't any questions. I just thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. I
appreciate it.
We're in. We're in. Whatever
Excellent.
we can do to help.
Awesome. Always be closing. Yeah, I mean, this really, I mentioned in the beginning, like this really comes from like my interest in like of trying to contribute to open source projects and sort of falling over multiple times and not really knowing where to get help, or also imposter syndrome. Like despite of me having years and years of experience writing JavaScript, like I completely failed in trying to contribute to Webpack 2.0 years ago, and like swore off ever contributing back to the project. Like I probably could contribute today, but like it really just comes down to like a lot of folks are just experienced engineers that aren't experienced in communicating through open source and GitHub. And I think there's like an opportunity to highlight that this is an opportunity, but also I also am a very big proponent of like doing open source at work. I do very few contributions on the weekends because I've got 2 small kids. So like if I could be way more, like if I have way more information if I have the 4 hours on a Friday to go solve a problem or open up an issue or communicate in communities in Discord, like I'm going to continue to like level up myself to make sure that 4 hours that I have only to do this, it's going to be the best 4 hours of my work week and contribution time.
So to everyone on the core team here, Brian reached out to me over a month or two ago. And Tom and Brian know each other. Tom, by the way, couldn't join us today. There's another company event that's going on, but he's going to be watching this replay. So more conversation to come. Like, this is just the beginning. But Brian reached out to me maybe 6 weeks ago and said, hey, can we turn on Insights beta or something like that for Redwood? We'd love to get started. And I said, and could you give me some feedback or like what kind of things? I said, well, why don't you just come meet the whole core team and get some feedback from them? So that's what this is for. So does anyone, and even maybe not right now, but I think there's a lot of lessons learned, or we think we learned, that we want to share with you, Brian, which have just led us to more questions on how do we do things. And we're in a different state than we are now because the project has grown in complexity.
Yeah.
And we can tell you things have changed, but we can't tell you when they changed or what we might need to do to adjust to, keep this very cool flywheel of open source contributing going. But anyone else, thoughts, questions? What insights would you all like to see for the Redwood project?
I think what would be super interesting to me is like if there were a way to identify areas of high touch, so we could figure out like why, just by looking at the contributions and being like, are they bugs or is it just people? I don't know. That would be interesting to me.
Yeah,
because we have quite a wide set of packages, and they have, yeah. Anyway, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that's also possible. I showed the sort of line level insights. So I'd say like the closest comparison to this is like SourceGraph, where SourceGraph can index for search reasons. SourceGraph actually is like a week away from their launch of some update to Insights as well. So like it'll be exciting to see what they ship. But like things like generating code owners, like I don't know if y'all use code owner files to identify, okay, this person is the expert in this package, or this person's the expert in this infrastructure piece for Redwood. But like for high touch, like we could totally do that as well. And then generate a list of like, these are and this is like the list that I want when I walk into a project of like, these are the people, or the sort of get blame list of, I should probably talk to these people first. I'm touching this part of the project. And a lot of times with me, it's like I'm using it as a consumer. I hit an edge case or a corner case of it's not working out for me. I have to make the decision: do I rip this out? Do I move on, or can I contribute back upstream? And if I can identify quickly how much effort it will be based on like having a quick conversation with a contributor somewhere in the project, then I can like evaluate in my 4 hours of time I've dedicated to doing my open source. I can go upstream, fix something in Redwood, or at least document something in Redwood, and then figure if I can come back to the issue next week and maybe tackle a contribution or something like that. And I think, again, it's like a lot of folks, there's a lot of emphasis on like good first issues and first time contributors. And like, we still want to solve a lot of those problems. But I think this sort of the open source in general, the numbers that I have based on access to GitHub numbers is it's 0.1% of all projects that are open source and attached to an organization. So like we're excluding individual projects. 0.1% have more than 5 contributors. So that number is amazing to know, because like if someone's like, hey, Brian, I got this all the time at GitHub. It's like, hey, how do I make my project famous, or how do I get it trending? Well, I was like, number one, like get people to contribute to it before you launch the thing, because you want to have knowledge transfer. You want to have people involved. You want to sort of give the semblance of community. The other one is 100 stars. So get more than 100 stars and you're trending. And you didn't hear that from me. No, I'm just kidding.
Quickly jots down notes. Okay, wait, anyone else? I just, I have a lot of things. So I was trying to let other people have a lot of things before I just fire hose.
I may pop in.
Yes.
Brian, Thanks for talking shop with us. This is awesome. So you mentioned a first time experience previously that it seemed you implied a little tough. We really value that first time experience and desire to make it good. So any insight from your prior experience or just from
for particularly of Redwood?
Well,
you contributing to open source.
I would say contributing to open source, and to be sure, we're interested in helping make the first time contribution to Redwood a valuable and say winsome experience. Any tips or tricks to help along those lines?
Yeah, and this is like the so I got an opportunity to work with the All-In program over the summer, which is like it's a program that I say we because I was at GitHub when we started it. HBCU students who are studying engineering, and they were interns for GitHub, and then we had 3 of them on the summer for open source. And the thing that I see success happen is like you don't actually have to go build like the entire owl like day 1 or week 1. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. The best thing you could do is actually just be a part of the community and like absorb information through like the Discord or like the river of information. Because a lot of times the longer it's sort of like the Karate Kid where it's like, when can I actually go fight? It's more of like, no, you have to actually, pick up the buckets of water and like do all the other stuff because then actually the best analogy I had was the basketball one. And I didn't go into detail. Like Michael Jordan was a great player. He became the greatest because he got put into a system. And not a lot of people understand that, because like you could be so good and be a detriment to yourself and the team. But when Phil Jackson basically took over from the previous coach, he instituted the previous coach's triangle offense. So in triangle offense, there's always someone on the left and there's always someone on the right of you. So you always know where to kick the ball to. So like I'm with the open source team, like we just had a conversation about this today. It's like you always know who to kick the ball out to, because there's someone who has an expertise on this part and there's someone who has expertise on this part, and you got to ask questions and you got to like get unblocked sooner, rather than like struggle and understand or basically wonder why you can't hit your shots. So if we're going to the first time contributor conversation, like one, having a welcoming place where people get to just hang out, and it's like stuff like this, like I can sort of navigate previous meetings and watch this and understand like, hey, these people are normal. Like they're actually friendly and they like each other. So like maybe I can join in this mix. But it's like, you got to do all that stuff. You got to carry the water. You got to learn all of the sort of self-defense and stuff like that before you start going out to fights. But for whatever reason, this industry, like we just encourage so much, go contribute, like go find an issue. And what I say is like, if you want a good first issue, open the issue. Because like the best good first issue that you can contribute to is the thing that you use the product for or the package for, and then you open the issue. And then someone's like, oh, wow, this person cares enough to open the issue. Let me show you what the answer is. And like, I also, more on top of that, I've done a lot of like thinking about this. All my good first issues have answers in them, and they can't be labeled good first issue unless the answer is directly in the issue. Because like, I'm not doing this for my health. I'm doing this to grow my community. So I have to leave those breadcrumbs out there. And then when someone's like, wow, this was really easy. It's like, yeah, can I show you some more easy stuff? And then I got them on a hook. And now I have like, so going back to All-In program, like I made them open up their own issues. I also left issues for them. And then I walked with them to like show them like where to look to make this code work. And then I've got people in my community who've been around for 2 years, who've been around for some people for 4 years. Not a lot of us, because I didn't really have a good product or even a Discord 4 years ago. But yeah, hopefully I answered your question. It was a little bit of a rambly answer.
I thought that was great. So I know we're getting close to time. So, David, one more?
Yeah, so I'll sneak one in here. Brian, you mentioned some analytics, and something we would love to see exposed somewhere on a dashboard is, and I'm not sure how this would work, but the ability, so the most likely person to help on an issue. So if we have a good first issue that we need help and we can put on the issue queue, is someone that has contributed code in the past in that section, but isn't necessarily on the core team. And we've thought about this a lot, but there's no easy way for us right now to go and find previous contributors, reach out to
Yeah.
them and invite them to help with something again. Because one mechanism we found of like growing the contributor base is to invite people to contribute. Right?
Yeah, it's
So by the way,
almost
also,
obvious. Yeah.
I want like your playbook. I want the Brian playbook of like, and I want an hour of what you just told Keith. Like, hey, here's the things to do, because it's not obvious, unfortunately. And we've learned a lot of things just through a lot of trial and error. But reaching out to someone, one, they're blown away that you would ask, which always blows my mind, because it's like, I'm blown away you'd volunteer. Like, so very mutual. But actually, like, there's just no easy way to do that unless we've seen them in the forums and can invite them in. But we'd love a way to invite people back. It's easier.
Yeah.
And another thing we really try to do is give credit to contributors when they contribute. And it just takes a lot of work. And that's also fallen through the cracks. We have an all contributors page. There's the all contributors project. But it'd be rad to have a simple tool that could really just highlight people, and we could post it up and just say like, these people are amazing and you need to thank them all for this project, and not just the core team. But we've written, code and put it in our CI just to be able to update all contributors every time. And that's also just harder than it should be. So, and I have a whole host of other ideas. Last two things. Now I got three things. Last three things. One, invite Amanda onto your podcast, please.
Okay.
Amanda, you get to pick a sidekick or two of your choice, but please, that would be phenomenal. Thank you. Two is you should totally use Redwood, and we would love to help you use Redwood. So just let us know, because then we have like the Redwood Club. We're just gonna hang out with you more. So like if you use Redwood, then we can hang out more. And then three, our mantra at Redwood JS is by helping others be successful. That's how we make the Redwood project successful. And I really do invite you to let us know, because we're like-minded, aligned in this. We'd love to help open source be successful, because that will absolutely make our community and the larger open source community successful. So please, that invitation, just outstanding, ongoing. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, you'll find me in the Discord soon. Yeah, I'm a serial side project person, so like I just shipped contributor.info. So like to get contributor info outside of open source, we're going to ship something that really cool and interesting for folks just to use for free and for fun. Anyway, I'll circle back on the other stuff, but I have answers for the first couple questions or first couple thoughts as well. But I do realize we're at the top of the hour.
Indeed. I know David's passionate about all the things, so he gets very excited. But it was so great having everyone on today. Peter, Brian, thank you so much for sharing with us today and teaching everyone a little something. We all N+1 today. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all soon.